And now our next spotlight will be Dr. Michael Ben-Eli. He is the founder and the director of the Sustainability Laboratory. Dr. Ben-Eli?
Thank you. Thank you all. Hello all. I have to say I feel a little bit like a fish out of water in this occasion. You came here to hear about Buckminster Fuller and the Buckminster Fuller Institute. Instead, you'll be hearing about the Sustainability Laboratory. So I will have to make a good argument for the link between the two. As a young man, I went to London to study architecture, and it happened that I've met Fuller on the beginning of the first semester of the first year. He was giving a lecture in London about the program that he was promoting in those days, the World Design Science Decade. And what he meant by that all the architectural schools in the world, all the architectural students will collaborate on a 10-year program to do what? To redesign the world and deal with all the issues that today come under the sustainability umbrella, if you like. This was the early 60s. He was way ahead of his time by recognizing many of the issues that today are becoming burning issues. So, you know, to me, architecture was Frank Lloyd Wright or Corbusier. I never heard you design a building, you design a chair. Here was somebody who was talking about the planet itself as an object of design. And I was, 21 years old there, and it was like somebody hit me on a head by a 2x4. I was all shaking with excitement, and I had a chance to meet him. We hit it off nicely, and I began to work from the AA with some colleagues there about that program. We kind of, for the next few years, orchestrated the program from that school. When I graduated, he invited me to join him in the United States, which is how I got here. He was at the University of Carbondale at the time in Southern Illinois. And by that time, I realized that I will not end up in architecture. I got very interested in the system science, the general system theory, in particular in cybernetics. And working with him was pursuing a doctorate in London on these areas. I'm only saying this not to tell you about myself, but to tell you about that emphasis on system thinking and cybernetics that is very important to the work that we do now. Now, Fuller really opened my eyes. I was totally unaware of all those issues at that time. It really opened my eyes to the kind of global challenges that have become more and more urgent with the years. His really contribution to that arena has been absolutely enormous. He's known mostly for his structures, for the geodesic domes and so forth, but basically all his inventions, all his artifacts were really models for a way of thinking about the whole world, about how things should be done, about how design should be approached, and so forth. With the years, I found myself very deeply involved with the large multilateral development agencies, as an outsider always, as a consultant mostly, the World Bank, United Nations Environment Program, United Nations Development Program, the Global Environment Facility, and many others. And because of my interest in the topic, I felt very happy to be in that milieu. I thought I was at the heart of the international cutting edge of what was happening. And of course, it was an opportunity to learn about this machinery, the international machinery from the inside, and to really participate and see many projects around the world. And it didn't take long for a very deep sense of unease to develop about the huge gap between the rhetoric of sustainability and sustainable development and what was actually happening on the ground. And that kind of led me to decide to stop working and start thinking what to do next. And of course, that brought about the launching of the Sustainability Laboratory. And I would say, without any hesitation, that everything that we've been doing today, everything that I'm pushing for today, has been really inspired by Fuller's work. So something about the lab. The lab is basically a not-for-profit research, development, and education organization. It was established in 2008, basically to advance the global sustainability agenda, developing it as a vehicle for kind of producing important innovations, And since its inception, really with a very modest budget, I think it has quite a bit of impact. The idea behind the lab actually was very naive and very simple. And you will perhaps recognize in it echoes from the World Design Science Decade idea. It's basically saying like this, that the kind of challenge that, in spite of all the work and all the rhetoric, the challenge that we face in the transition that humanity must make are entirely unprecedented. There are no experts to tell us how to do it. No one ever had to deal with the problem of how to manage, not kind of produce a harmony with approaching 10 billion people on the planet, with the resources that we have in ways that are peaceful and abundant and so forth. So there's no cookbook, there's no recipe that you can follow. And if there aren't if there is no such a recipe to follow, you need to experiment. And most of the entities that I've been involved with, both in the international public and private sector, are not built for the kind of radical, actually, experimentation that needs to take place. And where do you experiment? You experiment in a lab. And what does the planet need now? A global laboratory for sustainability innovation. That was like 2006, 2007. No one was doing it. Why not do it? So it was a completely naive, if you're a Don Quixotic idea, but nevertheless, we jumped into that water and we started with the lab. The basic mission of the organization is to act as a catalyst for accelerating the transition of world society and its economy to a sustainable basis by researching, developing, and demonstrating groundbreaking approaches to sustainability practices, expanding prospects, and producing positive, life-affirming impacts on people and ecosystem in all parts of the world. The first thing, I never liked the prevailing definition of sustainable development that you're all familiar with, development that takes care of current needs without jeopardizing the needs of future generations. When you think about it, it's really devoid of operational meanings. It's very difficult to compute economic utility values for future generations. Future generations are not with you to decide what's good for them. So the first thing that I thought we need to do is to come up with a more rigorous definition of the term, of the concept of sustainability. And that definition is born out of the concept that when you take a system view of any issue, any system, you need to understand two things. What are the key variables that are involved, and what are the ways that they interact? And in the context of sustainability, the two variables, they're still two prohibited sacred cows in the international agenda discussion, are population in the one side and the carrying capacity of an environment on the other, and that interaction is circular. The structure is circular interaction where the two continuously affect one another. So out of that concept, the definition of the term, of the concept that we offer is sustainability has to be seen as a dynamic equilibrium. Dynamic means you don't reach it and stay there forever. Things change and you have to go with them. Dynamic equilibrium in the process of interaction between a population and the carrying capacity of its environment, such that the population develops to express its full potential. You don't put any limitations there other than one, very important one, develop to its full potential without producing irreversible adverse effects on the carrying capacity of the environment upon which it depends. So you see that definition in itself, it's circular in its logic, and every item in it is actually measurable and operationalizable, if you like. And this is what we use at the lab as the thing that drives our work. Now, when you look at that circle before and open it to a higher resolution level, you have the population and the care person in one thing. Obviously, the two major channels, a population impact the carrying capacity through its activity. And the two main channels are the demand on resources and the generation of byproducts. And this is why we are out of balance, why we have the issues that we're all talking about, is because the equilibrium here demands that you don't, that the demand on resources doesn't exceed, of course, the regenerative capacity of, in this case, the biosphere, and that the generation of byproducts do not exceed the ability of sinks to absorb waste, we call it, erroneously as well. It's good chemistry that is in the wrong place. Now, the activity vector here, these are two metabolic, if you like, interaction. They are physical in nature, but there are many, many factors that affect that equilibrium in the case of human society that are not physical. They have to do with institutional, political, the way society organizes itself, worldview, culture, you name it. And we found it interesting, if you take all the thousands and thousands of factors that are involved, I found it easy or useful to, to cluster them in relation to 5 domains. And those domains are the material domain, which really constitutes the basic for regulating the flow of material and energy that underlies existence, the economic domains, which provides the guiding framework for defining, generating, and managing wealth, and of course, evaluating value to know what you're doing there. A life domain, which provides the basis for appropriate behavior in relation to other species. I'm deliberately not using the term environment, because that's one of the logical separations. We are here, the environment there, and that gives us a very distorted view of things. And the social domain that provides the basis for social interactions, and the spiritual, last but not least, the spiritual value domain. Are you a predator, or what drives you? Are you a predator, or are you a steward? And it turns out that that spiritual domain, the value domain, is really the heart, the linchpin of all these 5 domains, if you look at them together, because all the others have to do with how you do things, the techniques. That one is why you do them in the first place. And one of the things that we like to emphasize at the lab is that, that you need, every issue that you pick, you need to really address all the 5 domains at once. Not only on being spiritual, not only what technology, not only what the economy, but you have to integrate all the ones. And in our project, that's what we're trying to do. From each one of those domains, there is a principle, a sustainability, the 5 core principles that are now associated with the lab. And this is what we use to drive many of the projects that we do. The lab developed its own signature approach, if you like, that combines, it's a conceptual framework that combines a system-oriented, system thinking and system modeling and a system design approach. The design approach idea is very important here. It also relates to Bucky very much so, because usually we tend to look at issues as problem. The design approach requires a different, when you focus on a problem, sometimes you become trapped by it. The design approach calls you to project the desired state, what you want to achieve, and then walk back, what do I need to do in order to achieve it? The next is a theory of change, where we make a distinction between a first-degree change, where you make change in a system, but the system still stays the same, or second-order change, where the system itself is transformed and becomes something else, which is exactly what we need to do with the sustainability issues on the planet today. And then, of course, the definition and the principles. We apply this to everything that we do, both projects and education programs, and we always strive to produce major, major change. This pictures here is a project that we have in the Negev, with the Bedouin community in the Negev desert in Israel, and the duck here swimming in a pool of water that in an area that only 10 years ago looked like the picture on the bottom right, and today it looks like the top right. Primary area of activities, we focus on development projects, on technology, innovation, education, and now we are beginning to deal with issues of green economics, trying to experiment with financial instruments that recognize, at least in some primitive ways, externalities. So the idea for the lab is to develop a portfolio of projects over time that demonstrate the application of the sustainability principles, and to develop the lab as a global network of activity centers that map onto a particular ecozone. And heretofore, we have established relationship with the Ben-Gurion University of the Negev for desert and drylands, with Earth University in Costa Rica for humid and dry tropics, with the Royal University of Bhutan for alpine ecosystems, and for the University of Las Palmas in the Great Canarian Islands for island ecosystems. We have a lot of impacts. I think I'll jump over this and just give you a sense of the project that we've been involved with. This is Project Wadi Atir. It's the flag project of the lab with the Bedouin community at the Negev Desert. Basically, it combines indigenous tradition with high technology and modern science to create an opportunity to create economic activities, to create social cohesion and change, and really showcase significant innovation in a community development approach, economic opportunity, green technology, and ecosystem operation. Another project in Costa Rica is very interesting. It's transforming a reality of a group of migrants, how do you call it, undocumented migrants, illegal migrants. It's a large community that live in the worst condition that they are, and we are trying to, we call it Proyecto Transición, Project Transition. We try to really change that reality in a big way. We have a project in the United States. We are trying to demonstrate a bioremediation approach to abandoned golden mines in Arizona. We're trying to scale up the ecosystem restoration, that thing that you saw, the transforming the desert into green, to a very large scale up in a very large track in Kenya with the Olgulului tribe. We have some research projects in the Canaries that look at the interplay of tourism, the impact of tourism activities on the carrying capacity. We have some educational program, the Global Sustainability Fellows, which is a summer. We're trying to help educate youngsters of all sectors to become, to better immerse and better understand the sustainability issue. We have a prize program in a number of places now in Costa Rica and Bhutan that recognize graduation projects that best exemplify the use of the lab's principles. And finally, we have this monthly or bi-monthly podcast where we interview people in an open dialogue online, different opinion makers on sustainability. So where we are, basically, the lab has been able to demonstrate substantial results despite a very modest infrastructure and budget. We regard the last 5 years as a kind of proof of concept, if you like, not 15 years, sorry, as a proof of concept stage, and that confirmed that the underlying approach, the underlying concept is sound. I think a lot of it, again, to go to the beginning, is thank you to Buckminster Fuller. And finally, we are ready now to embark on the next chapter in the lab development. We have to strengthen our infrastructure, the capacity, and so forth. And we look at the next 3 years as the next step towards making it the global MIT of sustainability in the future. Thank you very much.